Hi everybody, welcome back to the Craft and Connect YouTube channel. It has been a long time since I made a long video like this, but I finally got back into my craft room this week after being out for a couple of weeks with COVID, and I thought I'd just see what I came up with. I recently received my sale goodies from Concord and 9th, including this friendship bracelet set, which I thought would be really fun to make some cards, especially with my kids who are really into making friendship bracelets. So I've got the coordinating stamp set to go with it, so you can stamp the letters on the little beads. And you can see there in the set that you get everything to make the beads, the strings, and various different shapes and sizes of bracelet as well. So I haven't really got a specific plan in mind today, other than just to have a bit of a play about and see what I make. My daughter did suggest making a shaker card with the shaker bits being little beads with letters on. So I thought I would give that a go. Now, I'm going to warn you that this card took a turn or two. I can only blame the COVID brain, but I didn't go about things in the most straightforward way. But I thought I'm going to leave all of that in the video. I'm going to show you the mistakes I made so you can make sure that you don't do the same thing that I did. So what you just seen there is me die cutting all the little circles to make the little beads. And now I am moving on to making my shaker window. So I couldn't find my frame dies. So what I've done is I've got my waffle flower A2 nesting dies, taken 2 of them and then taped them together with some washi tape around the sides to create a frame. So I've just got some white cardstock and I'm running that through my Platinum 6 die cutting machine. And you'll see that when I kind of carefully take that out of the 2 nested dies, it leaves like just a frame. So I'm going to die cut a few of those and stack them together to make my shaker window. If you didn't want to do this and cut several frames and stack them together, you could obviously use thin foam strips or foam tape around the edges of one of your frames and create the shaker window that way. But I quite like the sturdiness that you get of stacking several pieces of cardstock together. Plus, I think it looks neater if you look at it from the side and you can just see the kind of cardstock and not the foam tape strips, which I don't know if you've noticed, but they can yellow over time as well. So for some projects where you're going to be able to see foam tape, I do tend to prefer to go to a stack of cardstock like this instead. So I am gluing them together with liquid glue, and that is because you get a little bit of wiggle room as the glue dries. So obviously that's very good for things like this where you want to make sure it is lined up exactly. So you can pop one frame on top of the other, and then wiggle it into place before it's dried completely. So I am just going to continue stacking these together. So now that the window frame is finished, I'm bringing in my background panel, and I made this yesterday. I didn't film it, but I got these 6 new colours of ink from Concord and 9th with my sale order, and I was playing about to see what those colours were like. So I grabbed a piece of cardstock, swiped the colours across from left to right, and then ink blended them through with that heart stencil as well. Then when I'd finished my ink blending with the colour that was left on the stencil, I sprayed some shimmer spray onto it and then pressed my cardstock down into the shimmer spray. And then the leftover ink transferred to this card panel and left a lovely shimmery background. So that is what I'm going to use today because I thought that would make quite a fun background for the friendship bracelets. So now I'm just going to grab my liquid glue back and I'm going to add the shaker window that we've made onto the card. I've actually made it slightly smaller than A2 because I wanted some of that background panel to be visible around the edges of the frame. So I'm just going to set that aside with a big acrylic block on the top so it can dry. So now I'm going to move on to making some of the beads for the friendship bracelets. So these are the bits that I've die cut earlier. I'm tipping them out, and my plan was to spell out some words using these letters. It's only at this point I realise that the alphabet stamps are all in one big piece. They're not separate letters. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to need to puzzle piece my little circles back into this frame and then stamp the letters on the top. So that's what I did. I've sped it up for you because it did take a while and you have to excuse my head popping in every now and again. I've got a new camera set up and I didn't realise that my head was getting into the frame on a few occasions during the video. So I'm just inking up my letters and I am going to stamp them down onto the little circles. I've got everything held in place in my Misty with the waffle flower grid mat. It's like the sticky mat. So I'm quite happy that they're not going to move. So I'm just pressing this down and, you know, it's worked okay. All the letters have stamped on the circles in the centre, exactly where they should be. So I'm just carefully removing the grid mat from the Misty and then I'm going to tip these into my little container and save them to use for later. But then I realised that obviously there is a quicker way of doing this. And so I've grabbed a new piece of cardstock and I've put that in my Misty and then I'm going to stamp the letters first this time. Then all you need to do is line up the coordinating die on the top of the letters and run it through the die cutting machine. So that's what I've done this time. And let me tell you, it was a lot quicker. I wish I had a look at the stamp set the first time around before I started the whole process and the whole thing would have been a lot quicker. But there you go. Learn from my mistake. Do your stamping first and then die cut it with the coordinating die. So I'm just die cutting some of the beads to add to the friendship bracelets next. I'm just going to do this out of white cardstock. Obviously you could do this from coloured cardstock if you want, but I've decided to do it from white and then just colour in the beads with my alcohol markers as I go along. I'm not going to show you the die cutting process here, partly because I don't think you really need to see it, but secondly because my arms were shaking so much by this point of the card making process. Clearly, I am not 100% yet. I'm not up to lifting the die cutting machine up and down from the table quite as much as I thought I was. So I ended up sitting on the floor to do that bit of die cutting. But once that was done, I did get the die cutting machine back on the table and I have cut out the strings for the friendship bracelet out of some black cardstock. So now I'm just picking the letters out of my little pot where I'd put them all to spell out my message. And this card is going to say Tilly is 7. My daughter is going to a birthday party soon for one of her friends. And so I thought this would be a good card to make for her. So I have added some glue, liquid glue, along the string. And I'm just using my gem picker to pick up the letters and then place them onto the string. So I'm just making sure that this is, sorry, here comes my head again into the frame, just making sure that the beads go the full length of the frame, and I think I needed to add a couple more here, so I've just done that. And then I'm just repeating the process for the other 2 friendship bracelets to spell out the Tilly is 7 message. I've used different shapes of beads. There's stars, hearts, circles and squares in the set. So I've completed those 3 friendship bracelets and I'm making sure they look okay across the frame there. As I mentioned, my original plan was to put some of the beads in as shaker fillings for the cards. So I'm just doing that here, but then I realised once I line the friendship bracelets up over the top that actually the message is getting a little bit lost with those beads in the background. So new plan is to cut some beads out of colourful cardstock and just use those instead. So instead of using coloured cardstock, I'm actually creating my own, and I'm using the same 6 ink cubes that I used from a background panel to make sure that I've got no colour clashes, and I'm just swiping them across a couple of pieces of spare cardstock. And then I will die cut the beads out of those. So I'm going to set them to one side to dry for a minute because I don't want to run them through the die cutting machine when they're wet and get ink all over my cutting plates. So in the meantime, I am just colouring in the beads on the friendship bracelets, and I've decided to do that just with my Olo markers for ease. And to give those panels a little bit more drying time, I'm just going to create the window, which is going to be on the front of our shaker card. So I have one die cut frame remaining, which I haven't glued to the others. I'm just going to pop some liquid glue on the back of that, and then I am going to adhere a panel of acetate to the reverse of that frame. So I am now cutting out all of the little beads from the coloured cardstock that we've created. I'm just using my little mini die cutting machine because it's not quite so heavy. And you can see here that I'm just popping all of those little pieces inside the shaker window. I'm using my pokey tool to be able to get them out of that little die easily. So I've repeated that process for 5 of the colours. I decided not to do the 2 different reds, and one red was going to be enough. And then it's time to seal the shaker filling in. So again, a little bit of liquid glue on the reverse of the window panel that we've created. And then we're just going to pop that down on top of the well and seal everything in there. Obviously giving it the obligatory shake test to make sure that everything moves about nicely and nothing is going to come out the sides. And then all that's left to do is to pop our bracelets on the front. Again, I'm just going to use a little dot of liquid glue towards the sides of the string. I don't want to use too much because you don't want it to be squidging out the sides. And then I'm just going to lightly press these down. So you can leave the strings overhanging the edge if you want to. I've decided to cut mine just so that they are level with the edge of the card. Just make it easier to put in an A2 envelope. And then that completes our cards for today. So thank you for joining me on this slightly epic card making journey today. We did get there in the end. I did have fun making it, and I hope you like the finished product. If you haven't entered our Pride theme challenge, you've got a couple of days left to do so. And yeah, I've been loving seeing all the entries coming in, so I hope you can join in with that, and I'll catch you again soon with another video.